I live just outside Denver, Colorado in a relatively quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it works for me. I work as a full-time front-end developer for a downtown startup, not one of those billion-dollar tech behemoths, just 5 of us in a small office above a vintage record store. My days are mostly spent coding, drinking cold brew, and wearing headphones. My life is simple, predictable until it was not. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those cool, clear mornings when the air actually smells fresh despite the approaching Colorado heat. I was running late, hadn't eaten, and simply needed caffeine in my bloodstream. I ducked into a small coffee shop near my office. Exposed brick walls, warm Edison bulb lighting, always playing indie folk in the background. I walked up, gave my name, grabbed the cup on the counter marked Nate, and walked off without thinking. A few seconds later, I hear a voice behind me. That's actually my latte. I turn around and she's standing there, Rachel, though I didn't know her name yet. Just a woman wearing a charcoal gray blazer. She holds her phone in one hand, looking at me with a calm, amused smile, mid-30s perhaps. Hair tied up, makeup minimal. However, something about her was different. Not flashy, not trying, just confident. Oh damn. Seriously? I held out the cup, feeling like an idiot. Maybe I just stole your caffeine fix. She chuckled. Looks like it. I offered to buy her another, but she brushed it off, saying she had a few minutes to spare. We ended up standing by the window chatting while she waited for a new one. It turned out her name was Rachel, an interior designer who worked just a few blocks away with her own small business, Birch Interiors. You? She asked. I break websites and attempt to repair them before my boss notices. She smiled. So, caffeine thief and programmer, a dangerous combination. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, just light stuff, things we liked about Denver. My favorite food trucks, complaints about the heat, the usual newcomer versus native debates. When her coffee was ready, she thanked me again and waved as she left. I remember standing there watching the door close behind her, thinking I really didn't want the conversation to end. That evening, I researched her firm Birch Interiors. It took little scrolling to find her photo on the website. From there, yes, I discovered her Instagram. It took me a while to figure out what to say without sounding stalkerish. I ended up typing, "That stolen latte was the highlight of my day. I'd love to return the favor at some point, minus the theft." I hit the send button and regretted it immediately. I set my phone down and walked away. She did not respond that night, but the following morning, there it was. You're persistent. I like it. This Saturday, there's a photography exhibit downtown. Are you up for it? I stared at the screen for about 5 minutes, smiling like an idiot. I picked her up at precisely 3 p.m. that Saturday. She said she would meet me there, but I offered to drive her, half joking, half hopeful. And to my surprise, she agreed. Rachel stepped out of her apartment wearing a long dark coat and white sneakers, holding a tote bag with an art magazine peeking out of the top. She appeared effortless, like someone who didn't have to work hard to make an impression. She got into the passenger seat, smiled politely, and said, "You're on time." That's unusual. I code for a living, I said. Timers and clocks are kind of my thing. The drive downtown was simple, light traffic, the radio playing quiet music. I didn't try to fill the silence excessively. With her, silence seemed natural, safe. The exhibit was held in a converted warehouse in Reno. Black and white photographs by local artists, urban landscapes, portraits of strangers, that type of thing. We walked slowly, paused in front of a photograph of an elderly man sitting alone on a bench. "What do you think he is waiting for?" I asked. Rachel tilted her head, eyes fixed on the print. "Maybe he isn't waiting. Maybe he's just finished walking." She said something quiet and deep that caused me to shut up and think. I wasn't used to it. Most of the girls I dated before were around my age. Conversations were at the surface level. Rachel weighed everything. After the exhibition, I suggested we get some food. She paused for a second, then nodded. We found a small Mediterranean restaurant with outdoor seating and sat beneath one of those massive heat lamps. Over falafel and tea, we talked about work, family, and books we enjoyed. I explained how I ended up in Denver after college. She told me she used to live in Portland but left after her marriage ended. This was the first time she mentioned it. I did not push, I just listened. She said, "You're easy to talk to." "That's unusual." "Thanks," I teased. "Rare in a good way?" "Rare in a good way," she said. Then she glanced down at her tea and changed the subject. When I dropped her off later that evening, I didn't lean in or try anything stupid. I just told her I had a great time and that I'd like to see her again. She smiled and said, "We'll see." That week, I texted her once, just a funny photo of a guy walking 5 dogs while on roller skates. She replied with a laughing emoji, "That's impressive." I didn't want to push too hard, so I let it sit. A few days later, I stopped by the same coffee shop where we met and asked the barista if I could leave something for someone. I left a small paper bag with a lavender cookie, a tiny sketch pad, and a note that said, "In case inspiration strikes or you steal someone else's latte again." I left my name on the back just in case she didn't know who it was from. The next day, she messaged, "That was unexpected and oddly sweet. Thank you, Nate." I didn't ask her out again. Not yet. Instead, I started sending her little things. A quote I found in a book, a song I thought she'd like, a meme once in a while, always with space between, never too much. Sometimes she replied, sometimes she didn't. But she never blocked me, never said stop. Weeks passed. One evening, I saw a post on her Instagram story. She was working late, surrounded by design sketches and empty takeout boxes. I messaged, "You need rescue. I come with food and bad jokes." To my surprise, she replied, "Only if the jokes are terrible." 10 minutes later, I was in my car picking up Thai food. She buzzed me up to her place, warm, cozy, filled with books and plants. She wore sweatpants, a loose t-shirt, and no makeup. I didn't flirt. I didn't even try to. I just sat with her, helped organize her mood board, and handed her spring rolls. At one point, she looked at me, really looked at me like she was seeing something she wasn't ready for. She said, soft and slow, "You'd make a great husband." I blinked, caught off guard. Then she added quietly, almost as if apologizing, "But not for someone like me." There it was, the invisible wall. No drama, no cruelty, just a firm line drawn between us. I wasn't sure what to say, so I nodded, smiled, said something dumb like, "You don't get to say that yet." She looked at me like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. I helped her finish the project board. We said goodbye. She didn't offer a hug. I did not ask for one. On the drive home, the silence in the car was louder than the music. And for the first time, I started to wonder if this was going to hurt more than I expected. I didn't stop seeing her after that night, but something shifted after Rachel said those words, "You'd make a great husband, but not for someone like me." A wall settled between us. Not slammed shut, not locked, just quietly placed, a subtle distance I couldn't name, but felt it every time she spoke a little shorter, replied a little slower, smiled a little more carefully. Still, I stayed not because I was chasing some idea or fantasy, but because I liked her, just her, even if she kept parts of herself hidden behind armor. We didn't go on official dates. She would never have called them that. But we met for coffee on cold mornings. I helped her carry boxes when she moved her design studio to a new space 2 blocks closer to my office. I brought her soup when she caught the flu and left it on her doorstep. She texted, "Thank you," with a little heart emoji. I didn't know if that meant anything, but I wanted it to. Once I left a book by her door, a collection of poetry she had casually mentioned in a conversation weeks before. Inside, I wrote on the first page, "Some things are better when shared, even silence." She didn't respond for 3 days, then sent a photo of her holding the book with a short message, "You remember too much." I didn't respond. I just smiled at my screen. It was like that for a while. Slow, soft, one-sided, I wasn't sure. One Sunday, I invited her to the farmer's market in the Cherry Creek area. She came wearing sunglasses and a gray scarf and smiled the entire time, but in a quiet, internal manner. I bought her honey from a local vendor, and she laughed because it reminded her of a trip she took to New Zealand years ago. The longer we spent together, the more pieces she dropped, fragments from her past, her travels, her marriage. One night, we sat in my car outside her apartment building. She was telling me about a design client who ditched her after 2 months of work. She laughed it off, but her fingers clenched around the hem of her coat. I said, "You can talk to me, right? If something bothers you." She shook her head. "It's not worth unpacking." "But if it is to you," I said, "it's not insignificant." She looked at me for a moment, then looked away. "My ex-husband used to say the same thing," she explained, "but he never listened when it counted." That left me speechless, so I said nothing. I simply sat there, hands on the steering wheel, waiting for her to decide what silence meant that night. Then she reached across to touch my hand. She whispered, "I know you mean well, but I am not someone you can save." And with that, she let go. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night wondering if I was being stupid. I was not a kid. I was not playing a game, but I also wasn't sure what she expected from me, if anything. I once tried to ask her, not directly. I said something like, "Do you ever wonder what's going on between us?" She responded without looking up from her coffee, "Sometimes, but not always." I try not to complicate things that I cannot hold. I did not push. On a Saturday afternoon, I helped her hang curtains in her new apartment. She prepared hot chocolate. We sat on the floor afterwards, surrounded by a jumble of tools and packaging. She asked, "Why do you keep showing up?" I gazed at her, honest, tired, a little frustrated. "Because I like the way you see the world," I explained. "And I like how I see the world when I'm with you." She didn't respond, just stared at me for a long time. She said softly, "Nate, you're dangerous. You make people believe again. Believing is exhausting." That night, she led me to the door, touched my shoulder and told me, "Sleep well, young man." The young man part stung. I wasn't trying to be younger. I wasn't trying to be older. I was just trying to be present for her. Nonetheless, I kept showing up because she never warned me not to. But something inside of me was starting to ache. I did not want to be her good memory. I didn't want to be the lovely story she told her friends someday. I wanted to be real, present, tangible, but she refused to let me in until one night everything cracked slightly. She had a rough day. Some clients demanded endless revisions and then blamed her for budgetary problems. She called me without saying hello, just asked, "Are you free?" I said, "Yes." We sat on her balcony holding 2 mugs of red wine with a blanket across our laps. She didn't say much, just looked at the city lights. "I used to think I was hard to love," she said unexpectedly. "But maybe I am just difficult to trust." I looked at her, my throat tight, and said, "Then don't trust me. Please believe me." She closed her eyes, exhaled, but said nothing back. And I knew we were close but not there. Not yet. It had been nearly 6 months since we first met. 6 months of conversations, long walks, coffees, dinners, silence, laughter, and the invisible barrier between us. I kept thinking maybe if I stayed consistent, if I continued to show her that I was not going anywhere, she'd allow herself to believe that something meaningful could come from this. However, people do not change simply because you want them to, and you can't convince someone to fall in love. It was a Thursday, the kind of day when the Denver winter was trying to decide whether to be cold or warm, and everything appeared a little gray. She called to ask if I could help her rearrange her office. She expressed a desire for a fresh start. I arrived with 2 coffees and 0 expectations. I was halfway through moving a bookshelf when she said, "Don't you get tired of this?" I looked up. "Of what?" "This," she said, making a vague motion toward the air between us, "or whatever it is." I set down the bookshelf, wiped my hands on my jeans, and stood still. I wasn't sure where she was going with it, but something in her tone seemed final. She walked over to the window, crossed her arms, and said, "You are kind without looking back. Generous, perhaps too much. And I'm not saying I don't appreciate it. I do. But you don't understand it, Nate. I am not the woman you believe I am." I remained quiet. Let her speak. "I am not this mysterious, broken, sad figure who can be fixed with books, warm drinks, and your unwavering optimism. I'm tired. I'm done believing in things that fall apart. You'll wake up one day and realize you've been pouring yourself into something that can't hold it." I finally spoke. "Why do you get to make that decision for me?" "Because you don't see it clearly," she explained. You're seeing what you want, not what is real. Then help me see it, I asked. Talk to me. Be honest. She turned to face me, and for the first time in a long time she appeared angry, not yelling angry, tired and angry, defeated. You want honesty, she explained. Fine. You make me feel emotions I've suppressed for years. You remind me of a past version of myself who believed in second chances. You sit here with your damn books and sweet messages making me want again. And I despise that because the second I allow myself to lean into it, into you, I will break. That hit harder than I anticipated. I said nothing else, just nodded, grabbed my coat, and left. I did not text her that night or the next. For the first time since I met her, I went quiet. Days passed, then 1 week, then 2. I kept going to work, kept doing my runs, kept opening my phone and hovering over her contact. I couldn't bring myself to delete her number, but I couldn't bring myself to make the call either. My friends noticed that I was off. I lied, claiming I was just tired. One night, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the chair across from me, her chair, and I realized how much space she had taken up in my life without ever being fully present. I almost hated her for it, but I could not because, truthfully, I let her. I allowed for the possibility. I fed it. Then one Friday afternoon, I was leaving work and noticed her standing outside the building. Same coat, same scarf, just standing there with 2 coffees. I froze. She did not smile, did not wave. She just mentioned that she was nearby, that this was not something she had planned. I did not say anything. She held out one of the cups, oat milk latte. I figured some things don't change. I took it, still silent. We stood for a moment. Traffic and sounds in the background, otherwise everything remained the same. Then she looked me in the eyes and said, "Would you still go for that walk? Is it too late?" I didn't respond. I just started walking. She followed. We walked for about an hour through the quiet side streets of Capitol Hill where the winter sun was setting low. We did not speak for the first 20 minutes. Then she admitted, "I'm scared." I gazed at her. "I understand. And I'm not asking you to fix it," she clarified. "I just miss talking with you." I paused walking, turned toward her. "I am not here to fix you, Rachel. Hi, my name is Nate. I'm 26. She looked down at her feet, then back at me. "I want to," she whispered, "but I'm not sure how. So, let's figure it out together." She nodded. No dramatic music, no kisses, just a tired, honest, and fragile nod. That was sufficient for me. We sat on a bench afterwards, talked about nothing and everything. She asked about my week. I asked if she had been painting again. We laughed about a dog who was chasing its own tail across the street. She gently rested her head on my shoulder. For the first time in months, there were no lines separating us, no labels, no expectations, just presence. The wall had not disappeared, but there was a crack now, a beginning. It didn't happen overnight. After the walk, following that delicate little nod on the bench, I did not wake up to a fairy tale relationship. There was no abrupt transformation in which Rachel opened her heart and everything fell into place. That's not how things work in real life. Not around people like her, not among people like us. But something changed, slowly. We started seeing each other more often. Not on a daily basis, but frequently enough to make it feel intentional. She would invite me over for coffee on Sunday mornings, and I'd bring her fresh kolaches from her favorite downtown bakery. We'd go to the farmer's market together and argue about which peaches were truly ripe. Other days, we'd just sit on her couch and read quietly, our legs barely touching beneath the blanket. There was no talk about dating, no labels. She was not prepared for that. But something in the way she looked at me, softer, less guarded, told me something was happening. One evening, we were walking home from a movie at the Paramount Theater. Cool air, stars out, the street quiet. She took my hand without saying anything. I did not react. I just held on. That night in her apartment, we did not kiss, did nothing dramatic. We just sat on the floor, takeout containers between us. And she asked, "Do you still think this could be something?" I said, "I believe in how you laugh when you're not trying. I believe in double-checking the oven even when you know it's turned off. I believe in how you continue to pretend you don't care while responding to every message I send. She maintained her gaze, did not flinch, just smiled small, but genuine. Okay, she whispered. Then maybe we try. This was the first time she said it aloud. Not a promise, not a confession, just a choice. The following weeks were quite honestly the best I'd had in years. She began texting me first sometimes, sending photos of sunsets, her lunch, or the socks her cat was stealing. One night, she left a note in my jacket pocket that read, "Don't get used to this," with a smiley face drawn in pencil. Even as things became warmer and more stable, we never addressed each other as boyfriend or girlfriend. She said it felt too sharp and tight, as if it would break what we were building. I understood. I never pushed. I just asked her to let me in. Seriously, I'm still not sure what this is, she said one night. I nodded. Neither do I, but are you okay with it? I paused and said, only if you are. She looked at me for a long time before responding, I'm not sure where this will lead. I'm not promising you anything. I'm not prepared to talk about children, houses, or meeting parents, but I do want to be with you. Not for the future, for now. That was the most honest thing she had ever said to me, and it was enough. There were still days when she held back, times when I felt her disappear slightly, but I stopped chasing her. I just stayed still and waited for her to return when she was ready. She always did. The wall between us eventually disappeared, just open space, still cautious, still unknown, but open. Then a few months later, we were sitting on my couch watching documentaries she chose. She leaned her head against my chest and said quietly, I used to believe someone like you did not exist. I wrapped my arm around her and said, I used to think you wouldn't want someone like me. We both smiled, not because it all made sense, but because we were finally in it, whatever that was. A few weeks later, we began calling it what it truly was, a relationship. We didn't share anything online, didn't rush to categorize or define it for others, but we showed up for one another. We were together. Simple as that. She began leaving her toothbrush at my place. I kept one of her sweaters on the back of my chair. I met her sister when she came to town for the Denver International Film Festival. She helped me choose a new lamp for my bedroom. Small things, real things. One night, while washing dishes, I noticed her leaning against the counter drying a plate. She was humming something beneath her breath. Barefoot, hair in a bun, no makeup. I'm not sure what came over me, but I said, You look like home. She laughed. That's the corniest thing you've ever said. That doesn't mean it's false. She walked over, removed the towel from her hands, and looked me in the eyes. I'm still not sure where this is going. I understand, I said, but I'm okay with not knowing as long as I am with you. She kissed me, and that was the moment I knew. This was not about guarantees, futures, or fairy tales. This was about selecting someone every day. Even if it is scary, even when things are uncertain. We did not move in together. We did not get engaged. We just kept going. She allowed me in and I stayed. That was sufficient. I did not need a title. I simply needed presence.